Over there is probably good. Okay, we'll get started. Can you all hear me? Not sure if this mic's working. Cool. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming out this evening. My name is Brooke Larson. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Environmental Humanities Program. And the EH program is hosting this event tonight. We're a graduate program at the University of Utah that trains the next generation of environmental leaders and thinkers. Our program positions students to study climate change, resilience, advocacy, and other interests in preparation for changing the world. Quite the task. We encourage creative and scholarly exchanges towards new forms of environmental leadership and environmental justice. Braidan Weeks, who you all came out here to see tonight, is our practitioner-in-residence this semester. This is a new position program for EH that's funded by the Mellon Foundation. This grant supports our program's efforts to further environmental justice and community engaged learning. Honoring and learning from leaders in our community, such as Braidan, is a key part of the effort. Before I introduce Braidan, I also want to open with a land acknowledgement. Tonight, we are gathering in so-called Salt Lake City, Utah, on the unceded ancestral territory of the Goshute, Ute, Eastern Shoshone, and Paiute people. We also acknowledge that the prosperity of the United States depended on the unpaid labor of enslaved peoples. We acknowledge all that has occurred to be here this evening. We also know that to carry real meaning, land acknowledgements must also be followed up with action. So tonight you will hear from Braidan about the critical work he's doing with the Ute Land Trust, and I hope you all consider supporting his efforts after this event. Now it is my great honor to introduce Braidan Weeks. Braidan is a dear friend that I've had the privilege to get to know over the past few years, and I have to say he's one of the kindest, most authentic people I know. Braidan was born and raised in rural Utah, and he is White River Band Ute. Currently, Braidan serves as the executive director of the Ute Land Trust. In this position, he works to preserve ancestral Ute land and place-based cultural knowledge. The Trust's work reconnects the people of these lands by engaging with other tribes, federal, state, and local governments to partner in land, stewardship, and traditional conservation efforts. Braidan believes in a holistic and community-driven approach to environmental advocacy and racial justice. In response to President Trump's repeal of the Bears Ears National Monument, Braidan helped organize the largest rally for public lands in Utah's history. He also serves as a board member with Equality Utah PAC and the Natural History Museum of Utah's Native Advisory Board. You can hear Braidan on KRCL 90.9 FM on Sunday mornings when he hosts Living the Circle of Life, a music and news program dedicated to the Indigenous peoples of Utah. This past year, I had the privilege of interviewing Braidan for a book that was recently released called New World Coming. In that conversation, Braidan emphasized the importance of the Ute Land Trust program, language program, which you'll be hearing about this evening. He said, "The way that we understand and perceive the world is entirely embedded in our living language. If you hear these elders talk about our language dying, they are talking about something dying that is tangible, that is living, that they're intimate with. They mourn that just as they would mourn a person." That and many more reasons is why Braidan's work to preserve Ute culture is so important, and why I'm super excited to hear from him this evening. So please help me in welcoming Braidan.
Are y'all able to hear me all right with this mic? Okay, just wanted to make sure. I'm going to take off the mask just to see if we can get the mic to work. But thank you, Brooke. That was very sweet of you. Thank you all for coming out and seeing me. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that I got to participate this semester with y'all. So I got a little jittery there. But yeah, and Brooke kind of gave you the preview of what I want to focus on, which is our language program. But I want to give you a history of the Ute Land Trust a little bit more. Some of you have heard my synopsis of the Ute Land Trust before, so thank you again for sitting through it. But the idea came from our chairman at the time, so this is a few years back, was invited to go and do a land acknowledgement, much like Brooke just did, for the Land Trust Alliance. So they're the only accreditation organization for land trusts in the United States. And they were going to have their big event of the year in Denver. So when they did their research and we're looking at it, they're like, we should invite members of the Ute tribe there. And luckily our chairman was able to attend. They also afforded him the time, putting their money where their mouth is, and a real land acknowledgement and putting some action to the words, as Brooke said, that let him go to all the seminars and all of the teachings that they were doing that week. And he came back from that with a lot of ideas, thinking, well, why don't we tackle this ancestral land thing in a different way? Like, we're trying to protect these lands. Why won't we look at the land trusts? And that idea he floated with the other council members, and they let that gel for a while. The first time that the land trust really took any action, or that they actually created the semblance of the land trust, was when a man reached out from Southern Colorado. He had been having some very intense dreams of this new property that he bought. And he ended up needing to go, and he just walked through the property and found all these old Ute ceremonial sites. So he reached out to the tribe and said, you know, I don't want these to go anywhere. I don't want to disturb anything, and I can't own this land. And so it was with the land trust and it was with the tribe that we were able to get that land and return it to the tribe, which was really an awesome first action that the trust could do. So that got the juices flowing a little bit more. So we started talking about it, me and then some of my co-workers at the time, because we all worked for the Ute Indian Tribes PAC, so the Political Action Committee. And we're like, well, we're really passionate about this stuff, and so we want to see it succeed. So we started to engage with the community. And over a little over a year, we're interviewing people in groups like this, where we're just asking questions of what do you see on the land that the tribe already has that you want to see change? What's your relationship with this space? These type of questions that we're really trying to get to. How do we support you in getting to the ends of these questions, getting to the ends of the things you want to see change? And then we also did one-on-one interviews primarily with elders. So we sat down with elders, went to their homes, and just spoke with them about anything and everything that they would want to talk about. And that's how we built our programming and our proposal that we ended up taking to the Ute Indian Tribes Business Committee, which is our governing body. And to understand that, they are the elected officials that each band, we have 3 bands in the Ute Indian tribe. I know I'm throwing a lot at you. Don't try to drink from the fire hose. It's okay to not understand some. So the 3 bands elect 2 each. So we have 6 people on our governing body, and they're all elected democratically every 2 years. So these people are who everything goes through. If you want to do something with the Ute tribe, you go to them. And the people really trust them, and the people support the decisions they make. And so it's really amazing if you get a green light from them. So we take this proposal to our business committee, and we're going through all of this. And you can see kind of stress on their faces on some points, because we are going at all of this in a way that nonprofits don't go at these things, ways that land trusts don't go at these things, and ways that tribal governments do not go at these things. And so we were really asking them to take a gamble on us and what we were going to be doing. And it was really nice to get full support from them. We got a unanimous clearing from our business committee, and they said, we want to see something new. We want to see something bold, because what is going on right now with tribes isn't working. And so this was really ecstatic. And this, of course, when we officially got ratified, we sent in our papers to the IRS, get our tax exempt status. We become an actual nonprofit, and COVID hits 1 week later. Sorry, a little emotional. And then we were told by our business committee, by the elders, don't do anything, slow down, don't try to do anything. Like, it's more important to stay home. It's more important to take care of yourself. It's more important to take care of the people you love, you know? And that's hard. We just spent over a year putting this all together. We spent a year getting to know these people, knowing these people on things that they don't talk about casually. You don't sit there and talk to your grandma, oh yeah, you know, I think that we should go over to this random place and teach about this one aspect that's just a niche thing for me. You know, so we get to know these people in a different way. And so in our time of hurry up and waiting, we made sure to still be available to the community members if they had any questions, if they wanted to reach out. And most of the time it was them reaching out to make sure we were okay. So that was just really beautiful to see. Then we got to the point in the summer where if you work at a nonprofit or with the community members will eventually tell on each other. So we start hearing, oh, people are really restless. They want to do something. They want to see something accomplished. And the one thing that we kept hearing about is as soon as COVID hit, our language department shut down. The government for our tribe shut down except for emergency programs. So there was no community language being taught. There was no language being taught in our schools. And we're a land trust, and so we don't really do language. So that was something, though, we kept hearing. So what we ended up doing is saying, well, what we heard in all of our interviews is elders would always ask, well, you're not a fluent Ute speaker. How can you teach this or do this in a Ute way if you don't understand the language? And so we quickly checked in with our business committee and said, hey, this is what we're seeing. We're not doing anything else. We're just going to open a Zoom meeting and see what happens. So we opened up our Zoom meeting in the end of August of 2020. And we didn't really know what to expect because we were able to wrangle down out of all these people who are interested in language. We had one person who is a semi-fluent speaker that never has taught language say, well, I'll show up and see what I can do. I can at least teach people how to introduce themselves properly. So my bra, Nigo one Braidan Weeks. Hello, my name is Braidan. I also acknowledged all of you and your relationship to me. And that is the quick notes version of an introduction because it does take a little bit. But that is something that I learned that first night at language class. And before that night, we decided there was 3 of us that were there, a non-speaker, me, a non-speaker, and our semi-fluent speaker. And we said, our one goal for this class, for any of the time we spend on Zoom, is we want to create a space where people attend. So that first night, we are teaching each other how to introduce ourselves. It's just the 3 of us. And then 15, 20 minutes go by, and all of a sudden there's 5 of us. And then there's 10 of us, and then there's 15 of us. And we just had this swelling and this growth. And you can tell people were texting friends like, oh, they're actually doing this thing. And they showed up every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 p.m. And that continues on to this day. But of course, none of us being language teachers, we have one semi-fluent teacher. We had to create some sort of curriculum. So we're contacting the education department. We're contacting whoever we can. We're reaching out to community members that we've built relationships with and saying, hey, do you know any Ute at all? And if it's that one thing they know, where we put a list of words together and we could not figure out, how do you say computer in Ute? We just take that to every person we know. Do you know how to say computer? Do you know how to say computer? Do you know? And we get everyone else to do that. And eventually we get a word for computer. But with new things like that, we usually end up getting 6 or 7 words for a computer because everyone's talking about it a little different. And so it was really nice to be able to get back into that mindset of we can build this program from the community forward, just the way that we built our original programming model. So we start working with the community members and saying, hey, what do you want to see in class? You know, this is what we've done. This is what people said they liked. Is this something you want to see stayed? Is this something you want to see go? And it started originally as a half-hour class. Then it went to an hour. Right now it stands at an hour and a half every night. And there was one time when we were at an hour And we started having more fluent members show up, more fluent members speaking. And these elders would sit and they would watch us. They wouldn't say anything. They'd just sit there. They'd sit there, they'd call in on the phone, or they'd somehow get a camera, like make their grandchild do it or something. And they would just watch us. You never know what they're thinking because they like, so we eventually were gonna stop because we got through all of the words we wanted to do, all the practice we wanted to do. We were gonna stop 10 minutes early. You know, what can you do in 10 minutes? And one of those elders that was sitting there was like, no, 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 we have 10 minutes. So we're like, okay. So we sit there. A few minutes go by, nothing really is being talked about. Everyone's kind of awkward. Like, did we just get in trouble? Like, what's going on? And we're like 5 minutes till, okay, we're gonna, no, 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 we got 5 minutes. And mind you, in like Native communities, time is not usually this stringently like followed. So this was very abnormal. Like you hear about Indian time and it's not just, oh, people are gonna show up an hour late. It's also, if people are ready to go and you're not there, they're gonna go without you, you know? So we were sitting there just really not understanding what's happening. And she holds us till about 10 minutes after our time. And then speaks up, says a little something in Ute that I didn't understand and still don't know quite what she said to us. And then she spoke in English so we would all know. And she told us that this is her time with her community. Like this is the space that she gets to hear Ute. This is the space that she gets to speak Ute. It's the only thing she has during COVID. So the space that we thought we were providing was not the space we were providing. You know, we weren't providing that educational space. We were providing a space for community members to be together. And so that made us all class members and everyone kind of reevaluate, like, how do we look at this class and how do we like approach this class? So we ended up having our hour basically of education time. And from that point on, we have a half hour of just social time, of time to just see each other, time to be with each other, time to just talk. And we leave it open-ended. So if it hits that time at 7:30 in the evening, people are still talking, we just let it go. We've been there at 11 p.m. at night sometimes. And it's such like, I guess, a heartwarming feeling, of course. So like, if you're doing this work, you know that that is feeling when the community really is there with you. But also, people started talking in that downtime about, oh, this is what the Land Trust, I saw y'all do this event, you know, before COVID. Are we going to do something like that again? And Thanksgiving's hitting about this time in 2020. So people are talking about food. People are talking about our big, you know, celebration that we have. We have a powwow at that time. We have hand game at that time. People are getting together and eating themselves sick and, you know, gambling, which, you know, a Ute loves to gamble. So the time was very pointed for everyone. And that isolation, even though we had each other, was becoming very real. And that sense of what can we do? And somebody piped up, we let all the elders go. We kind of quietly let them go so that we could talk without them. And it came up, you know, well, these elders are going to tell you they're fine, even though they're not, because they don't want you to worry. They don't want to put you out. So we came up with an idea that by the time Thanksgiving came around, we'll have done a food delivery. We'll have done something. So we started to put the Christmas boxes, what we're calling them. We put crafts. We found out like if they had grandchildren in the house. We found out if they lived alone or how many people. And we just really tried to build a food box that was catered to their needs, that was going to make them feel like they weren't just so isolated. Because not everyone's a beater, but we put beating stuff for whoever was. We put coloring, painting. We heard some of the people off. If y'all know the reservation, Ore, but if you don't know the reservation, it's this weird mix of desert land and bird wildlife refuge, and then oil fields. So it is very stark against each section that you look at, but it's gorgeous. And there's a guy out there who paints. So we put some painting stuff together for him. And when I say a guy, I mean, I think he's like 85 or something like that. So he's up there. But that was where we had to start thinking, we got told we can gamble with the land trust, where we're doing something new and we're doing something in a different way, and we want to help take care of these needs. So we started to really hit this hard, where we're not just going to do these little food boxes. We're going to raise money around this. We're going to try and get this so that it's a huge community event. And we moved thousands of pounds of food that week that we did this. This was the week of the week before Christmas that we were able to do this. And when I say thousands, I mean thousands of pounds of food in hundreds of boxes. And it was tiring. We started at 5 a.m. in the morning the day we were delivering and didn't get done until way past dark. I actually don't even know the time, but and the education department ends up hearing what we're doing and signs on. The diabetes prevention program ends up hearing what we're doing and signs on. And they all wanted to provide information, help, sanitizing products, any other resources that they could provide in those boxes they wanted to. So we ended up, each house, instead of getting one box of something for a meal, they ended up getting 2 big boxes for at least a week or 2 of meals. And so that was really amazing to see, and kind of kicked off how the language program really evolved into other needs that we had, or other programming ideas that we had for the Land Trust. We've helped support the MMIW, which has now become the Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Ute tribe that's out there, and really have started to get to some of the work we wanted to. One of the programs that was revived through this is, in class, we started to learn about plants and vegetation, and the conversation around, oh, well, why don't we have community gardens? Oh, well, Utes don't farm. We get that thrown out a lot, which a lot of Utes did not farm, but there was gardening, and we ended up finding pictures of old time community gardens and how the community gardens used to be. And the way that the class developed our gardens and talked about our gardens was the way that ended up actually showing in those documents how Utes used to do it. One community plot, you all work on it, people come and take what they need, community harvest, everyone shares the food. And that's what's important. And it was important not only to have the food and to share that, but to teach around that. Teach what you're doing, teach the language, teach why you would take this food over that food, and really bring back some solid foods. So we were able to work with a seed exchange out of the Four Corners area to get seeds for us. We sent seeds that our community members had that they didn't even realize were native foods, and sent them off to the exchange. And so we were really able to help support that. And the thing that was really exciting is that our community members were able to talk about these gardens in Utilish, really. They were they're striving, we don't have any fluent speakers that have come out, but we have people who knew 0 Ute because their parents were either put into boarding school, or they put through adoption, or they were, forcibly removed somehow. And now they can understand the gist of what somebody is saying in Ute. And so that's really quite a feat if you've learned a second language. Sorry, my phone's getting loud at me. And so the work that the Ute Land Trust does is really nice for me, because like Brooke said, I think that a holistic view and a holistic approach to any of these things is the best. Because it's something that when I talked to the BC about getting the Ute Land Trust established, I said, I don't want to be around here forever. This isn't going to be something that I'm going to do until I die, but it's something that I want to see until I die, And so to do that and to get people to really invest in this and to care about the work that you're doing, like say the land, we had a lot of people in that first year say, well, why is this important? We live where we live now. Why does any of the rest of this matter? We don't have a relationship currently with that. Like, why would we take the energy to rebuild that? Why would we take the energy to fight this fight? Because it can feel daunting, and it can feel overwhelming, and it can feel insurmountable. So why take on a fight you think you're going to lose? So the Land Trust, for me, with that holistic approach that we've been able to do it, even through COVID, surprisingly for me, which was a really nice surprise, it made the land trust resilient, and it made the people care about the work we were doing, because they're now talking about through the garden and about the different soil type and how did we prepare the soil and how did we take care of the soil and how did we prepare it for winter. Like how having that kind of conversation, they start thinking, oh, well, when we, so say my band, White Rivers, when we were in that river floodplain, like all the nutrients washed up to us. We didn't have to worry about that. But how did we talk about and what was our relationship with that space and how do we take care of it? That interest became genuine rather than, oh, we're doing this because the land trust told us to, or because they provided us lunch, or because this, that, and the other. And so it's going to be something that I know these community members are going to show up, even though Meeker, that town is, I know that there are Utes who have never gone through Meeker in their life because of the history there, that now are talking about visiting there just to see it once, just to talk about it. But at least that once, you know, they get that connection, they see it. And that's the work that we do at the Land Trust is we operate through our community. Our community is what supports us. Our community is what does basically all of the work that we do. And they're the ones who support us through thick and thin. You know, if they can get us through COVID and they can actually get us from COVID programming at 0 to by the end of COVID, which we're still in, to being 1,000% further than we originally planned. Like the Ute Land Trust, I think has succeeded this year. So thank you for your time, and I want to open it to any questions y'all have.
People do have questions, come up to this time. We are recording this, but
if you want to shout, I can also repeat your question if you want.
So I have one for everyone too. So we used to have the Center for American Indian Languages here at the University of Utah. And we also had the Shoshone Language Project.
Yeah.
I know that some things have changed.
Sure.
What do you see the university's role in language revitalization and community support? Like, how do we move that forward when things have changed a lot?
Yeah. I think that, you know, obviously with that Shoshone program, you can see that the university can really support a language program in, you know, a way that is community centered. They focused mainly on youth with that program, from what I understand. Is that right? So that is something that I think is great, but each community is going to be different. So the way that that would happen, I would just kind of say what I've been talking about. Like, it would be to go to the community and ask, like, hey, how do you see that? You know, what would you like to see out of that? Because with you in particular, it's kept very close to the chest with some of these elders, which is why they haven't shared, and why some of them spent from August or September with us in the class till May before they started sharing words with us. You know, it's something that that they're going through some grief with. And so I think that the university could be just responsive to what the community asks of them around the language. I think that would be the best way, because it's kind of, it's that we talk about ancestral trauma or whatever, but it is like, if you take it as just a person, if they've had a traumatic event, you let them come to you with what their needs are. You don't tell them what the needs are. And so that's a hard question, because it's definitely something people have talked about or came from the outside into the Ute community, and it's very touchy every time. So I know that's a real non-answer, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I do have a question. I'm just wondering if you've got any upcoming projects now, particularly now people are feeling more comfortable moving offline.
Yeah, so our tribe shut back down in September, just with the resurgence that are going on. I'm hoping that after the booster and stuff, we did do our garden program that was largely in person because how else would you do it? And people actually, we've brought this up to say our language class in particular, and they're really nervous. They're still very nervous about being with each other. I'm actually surprised to see so many people here. I was pleasantly surprised. But yeah, so as far as our programming right now, the only thing in person that we have coming up is looking at like the garden program in the spring. We've done some youth mentoring down elsewhere outside of the Ute tribe. So some of you environmental health have already heard this, but we work with the other 2 Ute tribes. So there's the 3 Ute tribes. We work with our sister tribes as well. And so with them, we've done some of that. The big thing is we help support the language program with the Southern Ute tribe. And so they have some events specifically there that we're helping support, but nothing locally and nothing specifically just for our community. Yeah.
Thanks, Braidan. I have a question for you.
Please.
I'm curious about the land back movement, and
Yeah.
I think land and language are often connected in these conversations about Indigenous sovereignty, among other things. And so I wonder if you could speak to that, the sort of emerging rhetoric around the land back movement and how that's being received around you.
Yeah. We have not talked about that directly with community members as far as like the movement itself. Mainly because it feels apart from us, that's some of these movements that get going aren't reflective of all Native communities, obviously, just like any. But Brooke and I talked about this actually, that it's something that obviously with that Southern Colorado guy giving that land back, like that's great, and we'll take that and we'll do what we can with that, but the reality is most people aren't in a position to give up their home. Most people aren't in a position to give all this money away, because it largely, I think, I guess I shouldn't say it that way. For me, I wouldn't want that type of thing to be out of a space of guilt. Like I have all of this, white guilt that I feel because of where I live or because of what's happened to the people here. And so that compels me to try to absolve myself of the guilt, because that's still just, not only is that not fair to you, but it's all just for yourself. And so as I've kind of watched talking about land back and stuff, I've seen it kind of evolve and shift with certain spaces or certain advocates, and I really like where it goes into that space of do what you can, acknowledge what you can, take action where you can, and really do it out of a place of that relationship building, figure out who was there and see what you can do to support. Or if those people no longer are around, what's another tribe that's close to you that you can do that with? Because it's going to be very unique to each tribe what their needs are. Some tribes would not welcome more land. Some tribes would not welcome more people showing up to their homes, so just being very aware of that. I think the land back movement, I hope it leaves space for that ambiguity, and it leaves space for that personalization of messaging, because it can get very, and I'm sure you've all seen that with cancel culture or like with some of our politics, it's this is the right answer, or this is the wrong answer, and the reality is that this gray space in between is really the answer,
Thank you so much for speaking to all of this. It's so amazing that you managed to do all this on Zoom this past year with the Language Collective. And I was just wondering if there was any sort of recording happening or any sort of like archiving of these meetings, because it sounds like there's a lot of really exciting, important knowledge being shared, or if that maybe seems, like sort of what the maybe like archival work being done to preserve all of this might be.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay, I just didn't want to interrupt. I was just yawing because I was thinking. Yeah, no, totally. We do record our sessions. Those are kept for us, basically. We do sometimes, if there was like a particular poignant like class, or there was a class that was just really vibing, we'll ask the people who were speaking if we can share that with the community members, or create a class. And we are very explicit about what level we're going to be sharing these at, and make sure to get that full consent with them. Because some of that stuff is on like a private group within the language community class itself. So they can always jump onto Facebook, or there's a link to like a Google Doc that they've all been accepted to, or it's literally just one file byte that we give to one person, and we got the okay for that. So we keep it at the level we asked for, of course, but there's definitely, we are documenting and archiving that as much as we can, especially with some of these speakers that are, older, and they do, of course, go beyond language, and they'll start sharing a story in you. And so there'll be like 10, 15, 20 minutes that we're just all listening to them. Some of us can pick up some of it. Some of us are just staring because we have no idea what's going on. But it's important to keep a hold of those. But and anytime we hold on to that or segment that out, we make sure to get clearance for it. But we have had some people come in from different universities or whatever, and the class really directs it. So we get a request for somebody to join that's doing it for study, and we'll take it to the class and say, hey, this is what we said in the past, this is what they're asking, what would you all like us to do with that? Every time it's been no thank you, but anyone is welcome to join the class. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter where you're at, doesn't matter if you're native or not. Anyone is allowed to join the class. Teachers have just asked you come with good intentions. You come with like an open mind, and like that first couple of times, because you're entering into a different cultural space, and I think that shocks some people. Some people have jumped in and been like, "Oh, never mind," and like have never shown up again. But culture is still alive and thriving, and it comes very across on that Zoom. So if you do join us, which I welcome you to join us sometime, you're going to be shocked a little bit sometimes, and so that's why it's kind of asked, like, just sit and observe for your first few times. You'll get the hang of how we're teaching. You'll get the hang of how people are talking to each other, because joking is really big in Ute community. So an elder will joke with somebody who's younger, or somebody younger will joke with an elder, a joke that might not be appropriate in Western society, and everyone will be dying laughing. And then there's that one person who's not Ute that's like, so. But yeah, definitely archival stuff is happening. Yeah.
I just had a quick question. You said that you partner with like the sister tribes, as well as like obviously this partnership with EH for the last semester. Do you have any other like organizations, or even like, I don't know if you're in conversation with like state government at all, like other entities that you'd like to partner with, or things that you'd in like your ideal future, like what would you like to see happen, or what partnerships would you like to see come to fruition?
Yeah, so we're not as active with those partnerships as we have been in the past, as far as say like here in Salt Lake Valley, there's SUA, there's this Utah chapter Sierra Club, and Brooke, help me out. The youth. Thank you. Yeah, yes, there we go. Yes, okay. And so, I mean, we do partner with environmental advocates as well. But also land trusts are big, especially with our work in Colorado. They've been very supportive. And the Land Trust Alliance itself actually has really taken us under its wing and really helped us navigate some of the nuances in that space. And that's been really beneficial for us. So I would love to see us to get back on that same level with some of the enviros here in Utah, and then the land trusts also that operate in Utah and Colorado. I'd love to see those relationships grow, because it's something that with like COVID, and then of course people have their personal lives that, you know, work at the trust or that volunteer with the trust. And so we just haven't been as active with the nonprofits and the land trusts as we would like. Yeah. You can come back up.
All right, here's another one for y'all. We talked about land back. Thank you. Also a good thing. But we have NAGPRA and we have these like laws that protect physical things.
Oh, sure.
What I have seen is that intellectual knowledge, like what you're talking about, sacred knowledge, things that are passed down from elders, a lot of times end up in places maybe where they
Sure.
aren't accessible by the folks that they're from.
Right.
So what thoughts do we have about that? Because I know you mentioned a few things, like it has to come from community.
Yeah.
It has to be based there for it to work. But there are things here, like at the university, that are from the languages that have
Right.
ethnographies like that are in special collections and they're not able to be accessed in certain
Yeah.
ways by certain people. So how do we think about solving those problems?
Yeah, and that's something that our community members have definitely talked about in that vein with the archives. And I should have brought that up with your first question. But when people are comfortable getting together again, community members definitely want to start talking about visiting archives like that, or the BIA's archives, or the county's archives, because even if it's just, say, one thing that we've done is Powell, he like wrote down some of the stuff he was hearing. And even though he wasn't hearing everything being said, sometimes we'll give those papers to elders and they'll sit there and they'll think over them. And then they'll come back to the next class and be like, okay, I thought about this. I asked around about this. And they have a word that we didn't have. Like, and so one thing that you don't realize that when your people, I guess, enter into that kind of survival mode, or that protection or insular mode, a lot of stuff that maybe feels like fluff, or it doesn't feel like, oh, this is going to put food into my mouth, disappears. And so one thing that we were talking about, and some of the elders were echoing this, is like, oh yeah, we didn't have words for anything except for the sun and the moon, you know, that was it. And we get into one of these journals and we're looking at it and we start seeing, oh, well, we have Jupiter, you know, we have words for these other planets and these other stars. And that was, it was really exciting, you know, because it speaks to a different part of our history that doesn't get shared a lot, you know, like, and even the Hopi, who are linguistically related to the Utes, they go off of the Mayan calendar still. So like their ceremonies and stuff are still off of that calendar. And so it would make sense that the next tribe over also was very aware of what was going on in the sky. But all we have of it is from those archives. And it took elders, you know, sitting on thinking about it and being like, oh, you know what, this is what that word is because this is what this means, you know? And so definitely there's an interest in that archival work, and there's an interest, I mean, and with that interest, there's going to be a need, because I don't do archival research. The people who volunteer with us don't do archival research. So it's going to be something that we're going to be needing help and support with, so.
So this is just biased. I'm his boyfriend. I'm just curious, like piecing a lot of these threads together. You know, I've spent a lot of time in academia and activist academia, and we see a lot of really well-intentioned, intellectually sound projects around environmentalism, public health. All these things end up floundering because they don't have the, you know, holistic community-based approach you're talking about. But also sometimes coming from this world, we are outsiders, and it's the communities can be somewhat insular. So what would you say is the number one best step for people on this side, sort of the academic world, trying to bridge that gap to a holistic community-based approach? What are the best first steps to make those connections and to sort of embed our projects into the community rather than just being sort of intellectual projects?
Yeah. Thank you. I think that definitely like first step would be kind of just to reevaluate your expectations and then really be an advocate for that community to whoever your higher ups are. Like if they're saying this project needs to be done by this time, or that this grant has this time frame, or this, that, and the other, like push back. Like that's going to be really uncomfortable for you. It's going to be hard, and it's not going to make you your people's favorite person, but that is going to make you the best advocate and the best set you up for the best success with the communities you're working with, because you can genuinely go to them and have that time that is just you watching on and just being present, not asking them for anything, not expecting anything of them, not trying to give them something that they may or may not want or need. And allow for that breathing space, and then let the community decide what that time frame or project's going to look like, because they'll ask you eventually, like, okay, so why are you here, you know, like. And at least with our community, we had one guy reach out, and I guess just to explain this a little more solidly, and he came to me originally and was offering like, oh, with this university we're going to give you money, this, that, and the other. And as soon as I hear money, I'm like, we're not really interested, thank you, you know. And because we'll go without money. All of us can show up and volunteer our time. Like what we do doesn't require that money. And so that's, if he's trying that hard to give something to me, what is he going to be taking from me, is my thought. And that's a lot of the community's thoughts that you're going to be working with. And so I think that having that time where people can just genuinely get to know you, and you can genuinely get to know people. And then eventually, you know, when you're like, hey, you know, I'm here because of this, or you're upfront about that, hopefully they already know, but they'll approach you and say, well, what are you needing from us for this? Like, what are you hoping to get from this? And that's welcoming that, like, you know, well, I have this project idea, and tell them like your authentic project idea, because they'll then tell you, no, this sucks, or this part's really amazing. And they'll help guide you at that point. And it will become, it's so wonderful to see somebody in that position become the mentee, and the community members become the mentors. And especially like say with Native community, they've worked with so many nonprofits and grantors. And if y'all haven't read the book, The Code of Culture, World Economy, I recommend it to you. It's from the early 90s, but in there it even talks about people on the reservations are way overeducated for the jobs available on the res. So a lot of these people who are unemployed on the res, they might have a master's, and you're talking to them about this project you have, and they can really get you through that project, and they're happy to do it. They want to see success, you know. So that is how I think that you do that. You first become an advocate for that community right from the get-go on, we can't put a time frame or expectation on this because we have no idea where they're at, you know. But then just be there without an agenda at first. Just be there and be with the community.
Well, I want to ask you one last question, Braidan,
Okay.
if that's okay. Since we are here at the University of Utah, and you have talked with our students a bit about this, but I feel like I should ask this since we're here at this campus, and the University of Utah has an interesting relationship with the Ute tribe. There's a memorandum of understanding.
Yeah.
Can you just share a bit about that to educate us all about that relationship?
Yeah. So of course, there, again, with kind of like the land back movement, there's this like larger idea that any usage of Native ideologies or anything with a school or with a sports team are instantly nixed, you know, are not okay. Obviously, the Ute tribe does not feel that way. Officially, they have this memorandum of understanding. And through that memorandum, through that understanding, through the relationship the tribe has and the university has spent energy in building, the university went from, I think it was the 70s when it was last called this, but they were called the Redskins. And rather than just burning that idea down or completely changing and ignoring the fact that that was ever the case, the university and the tribe have taken the time to get to where they are now. There isn't a Native mascot. There isn't somebody in a fake headdress. There isn't people playing Indian. You have Swoop as your mascot. You have the drum and feather that was designed, from my understanding, was a Native person. and it has been okayed by the community that it's supposedly representing, which means that it actually represents the community. And that's also part of it, with being respectful of the community, even if you don't agree with that, like that's the choice they made. So respecting that community is also respecting that choice and supporting them in that. So it's a nice conversation piece. And so I'm really glad that you brought this up, because through that, we've started to see Ute students go from, you know, our charter school at the on the tribe or through the public schools and graduate from here at the U, you know. And that's really cool to see, because that didn't used to happen. Ute students used to go elsewhere. And then it's a big talk on the res every time it comes around, but homecoming games and who's going to dance or who wants to dance and who's going to represent and this, that, and the other. And since you kind of picked on me, I'm going to pick on you too, Bryce. So my boyfriend in the back there. We were going to go to one of the U football homecoming games. I hadn't been yet, and it was going to be his first time. And we had a conversation where he was really uncomfortable about, like, I don't know about the mascot thing, like this, that, and the other. And there's a whole huge section, if you haven't been there, that is dedicated to the Ute tribe. So they give all the tickets to the Ute tribe and they give them to community members. So we're sitting there and all these kids are around us, you know, super excited to be at this big stadium and this, that, and the other. But then I remember the moment that he turned to me and like his face had completely changed. And he was so excited because as soon as the tribe started walking out there, looking like Ute people look and singing like Ute people sing, and seeing our tribal chairman out there representing us, as like the tribal chairman, making no apologies or excuses for what he looks like or who he is. And those kids lost it. You know, they were just so excited. You can see how proud they were to be there and in that space and to see their community and their culture represented in a fully authentic way. And so I think that that relationship, of course, like any, can always be improving between the university and the tribe. But I think that they've come a long way, and I think it's a good thing to keep putting up that that conversation, to talk about it, like what is going to be appropriate and what isn't, because that will change over time. And I think that that speaks a lot to both parties, the tribe and the university, that they're willing to sit in that uncomfortable conversation and to have that and to keep going through it every 4 years, you know. You have time? Yeah.
Hi, thank
Hi.
you so much for coming in and speaking to us all today.
Yeah.
I think we've all appreciated it a lot.
Okay.
I just moved here from Michigan a few months ago, and
Welcome.
thank you. It's a lot drier here.
Yes.
But I think what's really important is spreading something like generational wealth. And I'm just wondering, can you give some names of organizations that would be a good place to donate money to?
Yeah.
As somebody who doesn't know the organizations too well yet.
Yeah, so I will put on there, some tribes may not know how to facilitate this, but you can donate things to a tribe and it's always tax exempt as if you were going to a nonprofit. So if you know a tribe, you have a connection, you're able to give them money, you can always do that. And if you're looking for that tax exempt thing, that's always clear. As far as the feds are concerned. So, but you know, the Urban Indian Center here, the Ute Land Trust, of course, the Skull Valley, the Skull Valley has a treatment center in Tooele that does drug and rehabilitation treatment. They're a great organization. The Sacred Circle, they provide healthcare to anyone and everyone. It doesn't matter if you're Native or not. The Paiute Indian tribe has their health clinics. And this is something that's incredible out of COVID. The Paiute Indian tribe operated geographically the largest area of clinics in the state, and they serviced anyone. So those are all great organizations. Of course, the Four Corners Food Collective, we worked with them on getting those food boxes together, as well as the seed exchange that we worked on. They're an amazing organization as well, if you want to get into Four Corners area. But really, I would say, and I'm sorry that I can't remember them, there's this new organization, I say new, but it's a couple years old, out of Moab. It's ran by this gal, and I can't remember her name or the organization's name, but I'll get back to you. I'll get it to you through Brooke. Is that okay? But just look at the orgs and see what their org structure is. Do they have a Native majority board? Do they have a Native director or natives in leadership? Like, just make sure that like when they say that they're Native led, go to the Native ones and donate to that if that's your focus, you know, and especially if they have been signed off, like say that any of those clinics I mentioned by the tribe, they're always a safe bet. Of course. Cool.
Thank you so much, Braidan.
Yeah.
Y'all want to join me?
And thank you all. Sorry, just one thing real quick. In the back on the table is some masks. If you want a mask, take a couple. If you have a friend or kids or anything, I brought them all for y'all.
Take whatever food and drink.
Thanks, Brooke.